Embrace life with a change for the better. Challenge your comfort zone with Glenn Miller, your personal comfort zone coach, enabling you, in whatever way you may need to step outside your comfort zone. The Outside Your Comfort Zone podcast explores proactive and practical tips based on years of lessons learned and expert skills and advice that will enable you to accomplish more. Each episode puts a spotlight on topics and experts in their field who will compel you to action and to get more things done outside your comfort zone.
So, Chloe Sachs, welcome to Outside Your Comfort Zone.
Thank you.
And today specifically, we want to get straight into outside your food, nutrition, your diet comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the listeners, I'm here with you, Chloe Sachs. And Chloe, maybe to get us started, I'll just take a transcript off your website.
Okay.
Because in my profession, digital strategy and customer experience, a website is a massive conduit for every business between the customer and the product or service, right? So for guests, I'll share the website in the show notes, obviously. But as far as a segue, just taking off your website where you say, I'm an accredited practicing dietitian and an accredited nutritionist experienced in assessing and treating a range of diet-related health conditions in babies through to adults with a particular emphasis. And it goes on listing the broad range of skills that you have. So I just thought maybe as a start, we could just review kind of the differences in that background between a dietitian and a nutritionist.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a question a lot of people, I guess, wonder about or ask. Often I get sort of presented with that when I first meet people. And I guess the main difference is a dietitian has usually been clinically trained. So they're trained to treat a range of health conditions like kidney disease, liver failure, cancer and people going through chemotherapy, that sort of thing, as well as advise on general healthy eating and weight loss and fussy eating in kids and all those sort of things. And a dietitian generally has been to university and has a bachelor or a master's degree. As well as that, a dietitian is the sort of the profession that's more likely to be engaged by like the government organizations or like hospitals, clinics and things like that. A nutritionist is more, I guess, general healthy eating, certainly weight loss, and not sort of so clinically trained. So a nutritionist wouldn't be seen in sort of a hospital capacity or in aged care and places like that. So yes. And as far as, I guess, like health funds or Medicare, Medicare will generally only pay for dietitians. You'll get the rebate there, and health funds will pay, health funds will give you a rebate towards dietitians and nutritionists. But Medicare is definitely sort of more related to a dietitian. And if you go to your GP and get a referral, it'll be to a dietitian to get a Medicare plan. So I hope that makes it a bit clearer.
Yeah, so I think, again, for our listeners and maybe just distilling it down, would you say like dietitian is more around kind of the formalities almost in health and body, where nutrition is more along the lines of healthy eating and food?
Absolutely, yes. That's a good way of summarizing it.
Cool. Okay, no, awesome. Because I think that's quite important. And when I think about your explanations, and then on your website there where it says babies to adults, I thought it's quite an interesting thing because, and also look, to give context, I suppose our listeners, they may have already been to a dietitian in their life. They may have been to a nutritionist in their life. I know there's a homeopathic element out there, which is not you, but they may have. And so I think when we think about health and life, age is a big thing. And so what's interesting is, and I think maybe this is a nice unique point of difference with you, you talk about like babies all the way through to kind of adults and beyond. And so my question is, are all dietitians in that same kind of boat, or is there specialized, same with nutritionists, is there a specialized age group that some might specialize in adolescents, etc.?
Absolutely. And often you'll get dietitians that say only see adults or only see kids. Some will do both. Yeah, I guess it just depends sort of dietitian to dietitian, and I guess what their particular skill set or interests are. So, fussy eating kids or allergies in kids obviously is quite different to looking at like a geriatric person and what their needs might be, and then everything in between. So yeah, it does vary from dietitian to dietitian, certainly, and we do tend to specialize a little bit in that way.
Yeah. Okay. And so Chloe, I think for me, I'm always looking at this edge of my comfort, right?
Yes.
And so again, by background, I do a broad variety of sport. For those that haven't met me, I'm probably adequate in terms of muscle and size and my body weight. On your website, along the list of your specialities across dietitian and nutrition related, there are these topics of weight loss, nutrition for athletes, vegan and vegetarian diet, deficiencies, even bowel and health functions. Now, the list is much longer, but I thought it interesting to just fold those into today's chat because I would think the approach is quite goals focused in terms of the patients that come and see you.
Yes.
And with each of these, I'm sure we could spend an episode talking about each one. Yes. But for me, it's like what with this kind of list in mind and some practical thinking, we're right at the beginning of this podcast today. For people that come and see you, is it generally weight loss? Is it a broad variety, like the majority of people that see you? What types of conditions would you see quite frequently?
So certainly weight loss is a big part of it. Bowel conditions, definitely. So IBS, Crohn's disease. I had a lady yesterday who is burping a lot and can't seem to sort of manage that. So obviously there's diets I looked at her diet and gave her some suggestions as well. And then a lot of interest in plant-based diets now in the last couple of years, and certainly diabetes, cholesterol, those sort of conditions are very common. Fatty liver disease is another condition which we're seeing more and more, and that's the rise in fatty liver disease is concurrent with the sort of the rise or increase in obesity. So yeah, I think those would be the sort of the majority of cases that dietitians often see.
Yeah, amazing. And so again, like I think certainly in my kind of on the running scene, and there's some ultra events that I do, and there's obviously a broad spectrum of people, and generally those are the healthy people.
Yes.
So I suppose probably the big ticket item is weight loss.
Yes.
But I think the approach that one can take in terms of weight loss obviously varies, and then depending on what they do, who they talk to, there's so many roads we could go down. So on your website, you say my aim is for clients to stop dieting. Yes. And to change the way they view food and eating to achieve a healthy relationship with food and still to be able to eat their favorite treats.
Yes.
So I feel like there's so much to unpack from that one sentence.
Yes.
Just, I suppose, to hone in on something I hope our listeners can take away with them and apply immediately in their minds and impact immediately, I suppose, their body, right? So can we explore that word diet?
So I think these days, when people come to me, I try to look very holistically at the person. So I tailor what I say to every client. You can't just give someone a diet sheet and send them on their way. It's got to be about, what their occupation is. So what their work environment's like with regard to food and eating, who they live with, do they travel a lot? Are they very social? All these things really impact food choices every day. And, we eat 4, 5, 6, maybe more times a day. So where we are, who we're with, it really does impact, our choices and therefore, our weight as well. So it's really got to be, you've got to look at the whole person. It's got to be a very much individualized or tailored approach. And it's got to be balanced as well, because I think diet has come to mean, very strict, regimented way of eating, that you can't have anything you like. It's, and you feel deprived. I think there's this deprivation inherent in that word diet, and that's why diets just don't work long term. 95% of diets fail, as they say. So if you're constantly feeling deprived or restricted, or I suppose unhappy in what you're eating, then you're just not going to keep doing it long term. And I think that's just something I really try to get away from very much. And so tailored approach, sitting down with the person, we construct a plan together, and making small changes over time is what works. Trying to change everything all at once or dive into a sort of a regimented plan just is really just too difficult and unsustainable for most people. So
okay. So like going back to that word, those words, weight loss and diet, and what I'm hearing you also say is really it's about a healthy food management plan, but also folding in lifestyle.
Absolutely.
I know,
Absolutely.
like Jackie, my wife, when I said I was coming to see you, because, pretty much this year, every quarter, I've got quite a major event, and some of them are really over 5 days, some are over 2 days, and the nutrition's so important. But I think even other friends that I've said, I'm seeing, a dietitian permanently, the feedback's like, what do you need to see a dietitian for? So again, I'm quite lean and slender, and, my body mass index, I think, is fine. But we've been discussing a program around healthy eating, to sustain that kind of activity.
Yes.
So, again, maybe we could just talk about different activity levels. Someone sitting at a desk, someone who's maybe walking twice a week, someone who's running 3-4 times a week, doing, for the males, and look at strength exercises, younger people, weight sessions. How does that all kind of impact the bigger picture in building one of those plans?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, activity, it increases your metabolism, your metabolic rate, it burns calories. If you're doing strength training, the research suggests that even when you sit back down after you finish your strength training session, you're burning more calories than if you'd done a cardio session. So yeah, certainly the level of activity very much determines how we formulate a plan for someone. And we might include more carbs at meal times. We might include more snacks if someone's more energetic. Conversely, if they are quite sedentary, if they're working from home, as a lot of people obviously do nowadays, post-COVID, then, you could be doing 2,000-3,000 steps a day just working at home. So that's a very low level of activity, quite sedentary. The average Australian adult is quite sedentary. So we do have to take that into account when we formulate a plan, certainly.
Yeah, because it's an interesting thing. I think you and I brought it up last time, and I'd noticed on one of my sleep recording devices that, you burn carbs while you're sleeping. And that, for me, that was a revelation. It was the first time I realized, hang on, everything's connected.
Yes.
But your body, the heart, things are still beating and moving and kind of consuming while we're asleep.
Yes.
And it almost got me also thinking to when you wake up in the morning. So coming back to what you just said, people, there's a 9 to 5 in those that work. I suppose, there's a whole bunch of mum and dads out there that don't work. They're quite busy. They're doing shopping, driving kids to school. But I suppose if one's thinking healthy, balanced diet, or food management plan, as we were saying.
Yes.
I suppose it's also maybe looking at weight loss, because I'm just balancing these things on a scale, right? Weight loss might be really an enemy here in those words. Like if you're looking at the psychology of weight loss versus a healthy food management plan.
Yes.
I guess what I'm reading into is there's an amount of energy a body needs.
Yes.
So I suppose body group, type, shape, that would impact it as well.
Absolutely. So your age, your gender, your activity level, your muscle mass, and that muscle mass is often determined to a certain extent by your genes as well. So yeah, all those things come into play when you're looking at metabolism. And interestingly, we talk about the genes, even within a family, it can be quite different. I've had clients, I've seen a mother and a daughter, and their sort of metabolism and I suppose body shape was quite similar, and then the other daughter was quite different, and formulating quite different plans for them. Look, it's just part of the job. But yes, it's certainly, yes, look, we're all different, that's for sure.
I recall seeing on Oprah Winfrey once, probably 20 years ago, on her show, she had the 4 different body types, clearly the shapes. I think, so again, I think women, but maybe men find it hairy to talk about these things. But I think if people want to get deep and introspecting with themselves, lose weight, improve life, get outside the comfort zone.
Yes.
The big thing is, okay, if I'm standing on a scale and I'm looking at a weight,
yes,
I guess the message I would love people to take away with is don't be so hard on yourself. And almost the things we've just covered, there's 5 broad categories, it's
yes,
sit back and say, right, what's my body type? From what you're saying, what are my genetics?
Yes.
I'm going to fight this thing, but it's going to
Yes.
be a fight because I haven't psychologically understood I can fight as hard as I want. It's not a fight because when I wake up in the morning, this is the way my body is.
Yes.
And that might be a different conversation with a doctor
Yes.
than it is with a dietitian. You know, and so again, you can give whatever food management plan you want, but it sounds like before you get out the starting blocks, they're real daily challenges that, you know, mentally, psychologically, physically one has to deal with.
Yes.
You know, and then like we're saying, it's like, okay, within that person and their body type, what are your daily movements?
Yes.
You know, you're sitting at a desk, you're not, and to almost consider those things. And I suppose if they were coming to talk to someone like yourself, having those things equipped and ready to talk about would help then in building a plan.
100%. Yeah. I mean, well, as you know, we do quite a lot of talking before we even formulate the plan. And all the answers to all the questions that I ask and we discuss are really, really important in feeding into that. Otherwise, you know, if I'm not understanding why the person perhaps is having, you know, more snacks than they should, or why they're eating at night, maybe it's due to anxiety. If I don't understand these things, I can't help them, because there is a lot of psychology behind it. You know, eating is a behavior after all for us humans. You know, we don't just eat to fill our stomachs. We eat for lots of different reasons. Socially, because we like the taste. Sometimes we eat because we're tired or we're stressed or we're thirsty. You know, there's all these reasons. So understanding that and working with the person to sort of to work on changing behavior and habits is as important as the food choices, for sure.
And I think that's so important because, you know, as you know, I'm an advocate for your approach.
Yes.
And I think, as you said, the way you absorb someone, you know, understanding and background and all these things we've just said,
yes,
sounds quite simple. But if I parallel that to the result, right, and how someone needs to push their comfort zone to actually achieve that result, I think sometimes therein lies the problem. In other words, I've had the same thing. Friends say, you know, people say to me they've been to a dietitian, they don't work. Right? They've been to a nutritionist, it doesn't work. But I think from this conversation, I hope our listeners are taking away that it's almost you have to arrive at the start line and be ready to run the race. But if you're not
100%.
prepared, you're almost setting yourself up to fail.
Yes. I think that just being ready, and I have clients sometimes that are not quite there in terms of readiness, and I suppose they haven't said, okay, I'm doing this now. And so, you know, they'll have results, but they might not be the results that they want. Whereas sometimes just the switch goes on, and suddenly, you know, they're losing weight, and every week, and they're happy, and they're saying, I'm feeling so much fitter and less tired and things. That motivation is key, and really, I guess, wanting it. Why do you want to lose weight, or why is it important for you to improve your health? There's a saying, a man makes a plan or he makes an excuse, you know, and it's very true. You know, we can make lots of excuses. So, but once people have decided I'm doing this and that's it, there's no stopping them. There's absolutely, you know, there's no stopping them. That's for sure.
So I mean, to surface the elephant in the room, and this might be a difficult one and put you on the spot, but I suppose, do you have advice for the person, the man or the woman out there who's they've been to see a number of dietitians, nutritionists, their doctor, and it's just not working for them? And if I park that question on one side and I bring up some of the things we've just discussed, timing, readiness,
Yes.
what is the goal? Like with the timing, the readiness, body shape, genome, someone not being ready.
Yes.
How would you, is there any advice you can give to someone where you could say, look, this is maybe how to go about it the next time,
Yes.
differently,
Yes.
to get a result,
Yes.
once and for all?
I guess the big, often that switch going on, like being ready is pivotal. If they're not ready, if this isn't important, because I guess, you know, we're all busy in life. We have jobs, we have families, we have friends, you know, extracurricular activities or hobbies or interests and things. And I guess if you really want something, it does have to be a priority, you know. If you want that promotion at work, if you want to lose weight, if you want to train for the marathon, it has to be a priority. If you say, you know what, I'll do it tomorrow or it'll happen on the weekend, it's got to be sort of at the front of the list. So I guess people making commitment to themselves that this is going to be a priority, and they're going to do a little something every day towards that goal, that's important. And quite often, you know, a dietitian or a psychologist or a friend can help you get to that point. But I think ultimately it often does come down to the person. Are they ready, and are they willing to do that? to sort of make it a priority and say, this is what I want to do. So that's hard. That can be difficult. People can spend a long time in that pre-contemplative sort of stage where they're like, I do want to, but I just can't get myself to do it. Can be challenging.
So it was a difficult question. And I think that's a great response. And, to kind of, it sounds like what is the motivation is the most important thing. And again, to what we're saying, it's not always about weight loss, but it could be a health issue. It could be 100%. Just healthy eating.
Yeah.
There's something else, Chloe, that I think is an interesting concept. And I kind of have been applying this in my own backdrop, and it's helped me bring in a lot of followers to kind of the mission of getting healthy and getting up and doing things. And I think applying it to health might be the same. And that's looking at these things from a proactive versus a reactive mindset. So, the doctor says someone's on their way to diabetes and they need to lose weight, or, someone's standing and looking in the mirror and displeased with themselves. And that's like, okay, now I've got to do it. And so I suppose that's obviously, I'm sure, a big part. Like, is that a big part of the clients that you see? If I set out of 100, is that 80%? Is it 30%? Where people are reactive?
Yes, I would say, well, it probably changes depending on my week or my month, I suppose. But look, often, I would say more often we're quite reactive. So, the doctor said, okay, you're on your way to diabetes, or, you've got fatty liver disease. If you sit tight and do absolutely nothing, don't change the way you eat or drink alcohol or exercise, you're going to get diabetes in a few years' time from fatty liver. Or I've treated your mother for years, her cholesterol was going up, her blood pressure, you are going to be on those same medications if you don't do anything, if you don't change something. And I've said to clients in the past, okay, you're 50 now, how do you want to be when you're 55? Do you want to be that 55-year-old, the one over there that's, playing with grandchildren perhaps, or, fit and enjoying quite an active lifestyle and, enjoying life to the full? Or do you want to be the 55-year-old sitting over there that's, panting as they walk up the stairs and on lots of medications and sort of looking down the barrel of, more medications and sort of ill health as well? So yes, we do tend to be quite reactive, but I try as much as possible to encourage people to be proactive and look after their health, because I see both ends of the spectrum, people who do look after their health and, and then people who really don't, and sort of what can occur and how it really affects their quality of life. And it, often it is preventable. So, yeah.
So I think the lesson there is, okay, so if a lot of people are reactive and they get some kind of bad news or some revelation, they get started. And I also think the baseline is a tough one, because maybe they kind of 6 months ago had the thoughts, I'm not in a good place. And then fast forward 6 months, they look a certain way, or they've got this diagnosis. So what I'd love for people to take away is this proactive mindset instead.
Yes.
Right. And so like we've done, you and I together, I've come to see you for a proactive maintenance plan based on, food plan. What we identified is I'm not eating enough veggies on the other half of the plate. And so even on our subsequent appointments, there's been no point coming to see you until I start to shift my diet.
Yes.
And then adding all my exercise on top.
Yes.
So if you could give a couple tips to somebody to say, okay, let's shift this paradigm from reactive to proactive, how would you recommend they go about that?
So I would say pick 1 or 2 changes that you can make. So don't try to change everything all at once. That's generally too difficult and not sustainable. And what we see is that people who sort of make 1 or 2 changes, practice those, get those under their belts, form sort of some new healthier habits, and then say to themselves a couple of months down the track, okay, great. I've done that through winter. I've done that well. Now it's springtime. I'm going to make another change. And I guess my top tips would be certainly trying to eat more vegetables. As I said to you, because only about 4% of Australian adults get enough veggies. So 4%, it's not great. And we know that people who eat more vegetables, ideally half a plate of veggies or salad at lunch and dinner, they tend to live longer. They have lower risk of diabetes, heart disease, cancer. They manage their weight better. They have better immunity, which is obviously very pertinent in these times. better energy levels, and they just feel better, which is, to me, often the most rewarding thing when someone says, gosh, I just feel so much better, or I've got so much more energy, or I feel like I did years ago, which is great. So eating more vegetables, or looking at how much veggies you're having. And as I said, that approximately that half a plate at lunch and dinner is ideal. Drinking more water often as well. I would say 80% of the people, when I say, how much water do you drink in a day? They say not enough. That's the standard response. And that's also, making sure we're hydrated. When the human body does lose about 2 litres of fluid a day, obviously sweating and talking and going to the bathroom and things. So drinking more water, often people come back to me and say, that's the best thing you told me. Out of everything you told me, that was the best thing. So those are the 2 things I'd say probably work on, that most people could work on.
Yeah, because it's also interesting, this connection between the body and the mind.
Yes.
And how we think about things and how we do things. But that balance, that mindset of reactive, and also the way people search online for information or talk to their doctor or their dietitian, I think when you're on the back foot, you behave that way.
Yes.
When you're on the front foot, you're very much leading the charge and taking control.
Yes.
So
I think being reactive, you're looking for the quick fix. And when you're looking for the quick fix, then, the keto diet, the paleo diet, the cabbage soup diet, I'm going to drink, lemon water with pepper in it, and that's going to boost my metabolism. Like, all these things then look very attractive. And the issue with most fad diets out there's a lot of information out there, but it's often just not valid. It's not evidence-based. It's not proven. So people then try these things and get, I think, discouraged and then further away from possibly what is going to make them feel better. So yes, we become very vulnerable to the very appealing quick fixes when we're being reactive. That's for sure, and that's a shame, I think, for a lot of people.
And it's also, I constantly have this debate with people around me between eating well and not gaining weight, and I've specifically chosen my words there.
Yes.
Versus exercise, or not versus, in addition to an exercise plan. And that, one could just eat well and the weight wouldn't be an issue. And so again, so many things in there. But I guess on the one hand, if someone was maybe a bit more like myself, where there's a lean weight there to begin with, right? I know if I eat excessively on chips and sugar, I need to do more exercise to offset that, especially as I'm getting older. But this saying, we are what we eat. I guess what I'm trying to ask you is, if people purely focus on the foods part of it, and I know this is probably a whole nother episode, the exercise impacts from a baseline perspective. Again, any quick advice, not quick advice, but how would you look at exercise? Because obviously you need the food plan. But if you're looking to, and it depends on the goals from what you're saying, but how much do you think exercise plays a role? And I'm not talking about hardcore marathons or speed work on sprinting, just going for let's say 2 or 3 times a week. How does that impact kind of the dietitian, the nutrition part of it?
Yes. If you're talking weight loss specifically, then we generally say that it's 70% about the eating and 30% about the exercise. Just the average person just looking to sort of get healthier. I would recommend exercising at least 3 times a week. That's the sort of the standard recommendation, at least 30 minutes 3 times a week. And I always say to people, whatever you enjoy, because if you enjoy the movement or the activity you're doing, you'll keep doing it. If you absolutely hate doing laps up and down a swimming pool, then, you've got to look at doing something else. And whether it's, an online workout, which are obviously more and more popular now at home, especially, I guess, in winter. If it's walking, especially going with a friend, where you're chattering and you don't, even realize that you're exercising, listening to a podcast or music will often, that anything which I guess engages the mind will often keep the body moving, because, you don't get bored. Dancing in front of the television, Zumba, whatever you enjoy is what you should plan on doing. And often say, if exercise was a pill, we'd give it to everybody. It's good for blood pressure, cholesterol, obviously mental health, stress, building your muscle. It's good for everything. So yeah, look, it's a very, very important part of lifestyle, that's for sure.
And kind of then like that mental health word, like coming into kind of a plan. So for those on the call that are thinking, yes, like all of this applies to me. And, from a reactive side, I've tried so hard, it hasn't worked. The flip side, those that are actually healthy and thinking, okay, I'm listening to this proactive approach, I'd love to try that. Where does the mental part of things, and I suppose diet has, food, it has such a big way in on the mental health part of all of this. So can we put a lens on the mental health outcomes in terms of the mindset of aligning with a goal from a diet point of view?
Okay, so you're saying how it will benefit your mental health? Do you mean if you sort of got a plan and you're?
Yeah, I think from if someone came in to see you from a reaction point of view, I have to lose this weight. The mental state that you see on that example, if you could speak into that, and then on the other hand, if that individual came in with more of a proactive plan 6 months before, what would they mean? How would that? If you looked fast forwarding a year ahead, and now you've got these two patients sitting in front of you. One was reactive, one was proactive. What would the kind of the mental health parts? I'd love to try and just extract, how you see which one's better, which one's worse, and why.
So I guess, look, ideally a proactive approach is better. It's more, I suppose, positive, if you can say that. The person may be a little bit more ready. As you say, they feel like they're on the front foot. They probably feel a little bit more in control, which is obviously a feeling that we like to have, and that they're going to manage, they're going to put together a plan with me. It's going to be as you say, a proactive approach. They'll probably be more engaged in what they're going to do. Someone, if they're coming from a more reactive mindset, they're often a little bit more, I guess, scared or unsettled. They're thinking, I need to do something fast, and they may be a little bit more, slightly less willing to jump in and I guess start as well. So yeah, look, ideally you want to be proactive, and I guess that's always been my sort of personal approach. People say to me, "Oh, why do how do you always eat well, and how do you do other things?" I guess because I'd rather do that than worry about the after effects. If you don't eat well, or you're not, you don't feel so good if you don't look after yourself. I've always thought proactive is a better approach and an easier sort of route to take. And you have all those benefits from having a proactive approach to your health also. So yes, it's, as you say, on the front foot. That's a very good analogy. That being on the front foot, I think, is more people feel that they're going to achieve better that way. And I think that's certainly the case. So
it's weird. It's and I think the society we live, it's so geared.
Yeah.
I think on the negative side, to be blunt, there's chips and chocolate and fried food, quick food everywhere. And I think that mental health, that takes a toll on the way, because we're programmed this way from when we're born. It's like you enter this world. So, and you think of hunter-gatherer and those days, right? It was survival. It's survival food.
Yes.
But it's almost it's disheartening. And I think maybe as we draw towards the pointy end of the podcast today, we've covered so much. But I think, kind of to summarize, I think the biggest advice I'd give to listeners out there is being birthed into this world of difficulty on a diet level, on a health level. It sounds to me what you've just described when you're talking to your friends is you just wake up and be healthy. And ironically, we're saying that's like a proactive approach to eating, because our baseline is quite negative to begin with. It's quite difficult to begin with. We're almost forced into reaction because from what I'm hearing you say, most people that come see you are already with the problem.
Yes, definitely.
And so I don't know, Chloe, I might even hand it back if you were to summarize and kind of highball it across message you could send those listening to today. Maybe I'll lead the summary by saying we've covered, proactive definitely versus reactive. What I'm hearing you also say is maybe don't lean on the dietitian for a plan. Go in with a plan of the goal you want to achieve, and then work on that plan together.
Yes.
And that plan on the backdrop of a person's frame, their genome, their health issues, their mental state, the body, taking those kind of pillars into account. Hopefully this podcast can equip them, even if they literally write those things down, with, okay, how do I start building this plan? And so they can almost go in with a cheat sheet, maybe, if they're not seeing you, to come in with a cheat sheet and say, right, I've got to take into account these things, and or leave and cross-reference those things and say, did they see a dietitian or nutritionist that followed that kind of guideline? Because it just sounds like healthy living to me.
Yes, absolutely. And, I guess just remembering always, prevention is better than the cure. I mean, it's such a cliche, isn't it? But it's, really, and I think people often, get used to feeling average, I suppose. If they're not eating well, they get used to feeling average, and it becomes almost the norm. So if you can see someone or have a conversation about your health, it's always beneficial. It's one of the few guarantees in life. You eat better, you feel better. And how many guarantees do we get? We don't get too many, do we? So yeah, you will feel better. Yes, it takes a little bit of effort, but I think it is well worthwhile. That's for sure. Mm.
And, if I was to leave listeners with like a major tip that really influenced my life, it's maybe, there's this notion to step on a scale, every day and use that as the balance. Like, did I lose today? Did I gain today? But I'd almost say convert that time and energy to looking at one's calendar. Mm. And so listening to this, if they want to get serious about not losing weight, a healthy food management plan, I'd almost say sit back, look at the calendar and say, if I'm a busy parent and I do lifts and drop-offs and I have no time to exercise, there's after drop-off. It's like I'd almost say, literally look back and say, look at my life, look at my calendar, reset to now, and worry about how do I plug exercise in. I know you shared with me certain apps. Again, I'll put in the show notes. I think it's free. It's the MyFitnessPal app. I found it quite difficult to log everything. And you said it came with that caveat that, if you're into that mindset or you need that, some people might need that. There's a tool, which again, I'll include. But my biggest advice is for people to actually sit back, take this virtual plan, those points we said before, and actually almost map it out and get serious about it. And step outside the comfort zone to commit to it. Yes. And put a goal.
Yes. And absolutely. Planning is so important. If you've got a goal, obviously, but just, trying to fit a bit of exercise in. When am I going to plan, healthy meals? Even just on a Sunday, like 10 minutes thinking, okay, this is what we're going to have for dinner Monday night and Tuesday night. Even if you only set that up for the week, it's really helpful. It just makes things easier. So I agree. Looking at the calendar and thinking, how am I going to do this? Where am I going to fit it in? Because if you want to, you absolutely can. There's no doubt. But you just got to sit down and have a bit of a think about it.
Well, I just hope, coming from you, the professional, and me in a different way, hoping that this has inspired people to kind of step outside the comfort zone, and once and for all, if that's their backdrop, or proactively improving or gearing better or getting to feel better if they're high-powered athletes. I hope this is motivating them and inspiring to do it. Chloe, thanks so much for coming on the show and coming on the podcast. It's been awesome to have you. Today, we've just unpacked one little segment of maybe more the dietitian side of things by the sound of it, but I would love to have you back in future. And just thanks so much.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. And I'd love to come back.
Thanks for listening to Outside Your Comfort Zone with Glenn Miller, your comfort zone coach. If you like what you hear, help spread the word. Subscribe to the podcast and invite a friend. For show notes, links, and extra goodies, visit comfortzonecoach.com.au.